She-Era's compound eyes tracked the human across the crowded market. Her multiple legs tensed, ready to move away at any moment. The human was tall, with dark hair and strange, flat eyes that looked forward instead of seeing all directions like hers. He wore dirty work clothes and moved slowly between the stalls, picking up supplies. Every Volith knew to fear humans. The war had ended only 3 years ago, but the memories burned bright. Humans were deathbringers. They fought like nothing else in the galaxy. When you hurt them, they came back angrier. When you trapped them, they found impossible ways out. When any sensible species would surrender, humans kept fighting. She-Era pulled her young offspring closer with one chitinous arm. Little Calyx chirped softly, his small mandibles clicking with curiosity. He was too young to remember the war, too young to understand why his mother's body went rigid whenever a human came near. The human looked up suddenly. His eyes met She-Era's clustered ocular sensors. For a moment, neither moved. Then the human's face did something strange. The corners of his mouth turned upward slightly. He moved his head in a small downward motion. She-Era's translator chip identified it as a greeting gesture. Terror shot through her. She stepped backward, wrapping both arms around Calyx. The human's face changed again. The upward curve disappeared. Something in his flat eyes looked hurt? No. That was impossible. Humans didn't feel hurt. They felt anger and violence, and nothing else. The human turned away and continued shopping. She-Era's respiratory spiracles fluttered rapidly. She needed to leave. She gathered Calyx and moved quickly toward the Volith section of the colony, where fewer humans went. From his office window overlooking the market, Dong-Hyun watched the interaction. He sighed heavily. The human administrator had worked on Kesper 7 colony for 2 years, trying to build peace between the two species. It was like trying to build on sand. The foundation kept shifting. He knew that human in the market. Tae-young. A quiet man who worked as a mechanic in the lower levels. He kept to himself. Did good work. Never caused trouble. Dong-Hyun had seen Tae-young's military record. The man had been a combat engineer during the war. He had seen terrible things. Done terrible things, probably. But here on Kesper 7, he only fixed broken equipment and spoke to almost no one. Dong-Hyun returned to his desk. His job was to keep the peace. The colony needed both species. Humans were good at heavy industry and complex machines. The Volith were excellent at chemical processing and could work in environments that would kill humans. Together, they made Kesper 7 profitable. Apart, the colony would fail. But profit meant nothing if fear poisoned every interaction. That evening, She-Era sat with Calyx in their dwelling. The small space was warm and humid, the way Volith preferred. She prepared their meal, while Calyx played with geometric puzzles. "Mother," Calyx chirped, "why do we fear the humans?" She-Era's mandibles clicked together nervously. She had known this question would come. "Because they are dangerous, little one. But the human in the market didn't hurt us. He looked sad when you moved away." "Well, humans don't feel sad," She-Era said firmly. "They are warriors. Fighting machines. During the war, they destroyed 12 of our hive ships. 12. They used weapons that burned everything. They never stopped, never surrendered, never showed mercy." Calyx tilted his head, a gesture of confusion. "But the war is over." "The war ended because both sides were too tired to continue," She-Era explained. "Not because humans wanted peace. They would have kept fighting forever if they could. That's what makes them terrifying. They don't know when to stop." She remembered the stories the elders told. Human soldiers who kept fighting even after terrible wounds. Human ships that rammed into Volith vessels when their weapons failed. Humans who showed creativity and violence that no other species could match. The Volith had superior numbers and better shields, but humans had something else. Something that didn't translate well. The elders called it determination. She-Era thought it was madness. "You must promise me something," She-Era said, kneeling to Calyx's level. Never approach a human alone. Never trust them. Never forget what they are capable of. Calix's antennae drooped. I promise, Mother. But even as he said it, Calix thought about the human's eyes in the market. They hadn't looked like a warrior's eyes. They had looked lonely. Tae-young returned to his small quarters near the mining tunnels. The space was plain and clean. A sleeping pad, a small kitchen unit, a workbench covered in tools and half-repaired devices. No decorations. No personal items except one photo, which he kept face down in a drawer. He ate a simple meal and tried not to think about the Valith mother's fear. He understood it. He had fought in the war. He had boarded Valith ships and disabled their systems while Marines fought through the corridors. He had seen the inside of their hive ships, had watched them defend their eggs with desperate fury. The war had been brutal on both sides. Humans lost millions. Entire colonies were destroyed. But humans had an advantage. They were crazy enough to never give up. When the Valeth thought they were winning, humans came back with new tactics, new weapons, new strategies. The Valeth were excellent at many things, but they fought with logic and efficiency. Humans fought with something beyond logic. Both sides finally agreed to stop because continuing meant extinction for one or both species. The peace treaty was signed. Colonies like Kesper 7 were established to prove that cooperation was possible. Tae-young had come here to escape the war, to be somewhere quiet, to fix things instead of breaking them. But the war followed him anyway, in the eyes of every Valeth who saw him and remembered what his species had done. He understood their fear. He just wished it didn't hurt quite so much to see it. 3 days passed quietly. The colony continued its work. Humans and Valeth shared the same spaces but rarely spoke. They traded goods through automated systems. They worked in separate shifts when possible. The peace held, but it was cold and fragile. On the third day, the morning shift began as usual. Workers descended into the mining tunnels. The colony's main income came from crystalline deposits deep underground. The work was dangerous but profitable. Shiera was in the market again when it happened. A deep rumble shook the ground. Then another. The warning sirens began to wail. Tunnel collapse, someone shouted. The lower tunnels are collapsing. Panic spread through the market. Workers and families ran toward the tunnel entrance. Shiera's heart seized. Calix. He should have been at the learning center. He should have been safe. But she knew her curious offspring. She knew he sometimes snuck away to watch the miners work. Fascinated by the glowing crystals they brought up, she ran toward the tunnels, her multiple legs carrying her faster than any human could sprint. Other parents were running too, both human and Valith, all thinking the same desperate thought. Please let my child be safe. At the tunnel entrance, chaos ruled. Dust poured from the opening. Engineers shouted orders. A human woman with a safety vest was trying to organize rescue teams. Shiera grabbed the nearest worker. My offspring. Calix. Is he on the safe list? The worker checked a datapad. I'm sorry. He's not listed as being in the learning center. If he was in the tunnels. The world spun. Shiera's legs nearly gave out. Calix was below. Her baby was trapped in the dark, under tons of rock. Around her, other parents were learning the same terrible news. Human and Valith voices mixed in grief and fear. The barriers between species didn't matter now. They were all just parents, facing the worst moment of their lives. The human engineer named Sun Hee stood on a platform above the tunnel entrance. Her face was grim as she studied the scanner readings. Around her, desperate parents pushed forward, demanding answers. Security personnel struggled to hold them back. Please, everyone listen, Sun Hee called out, her voice amplified through speakers. We have confirmation that 7 workers are trapped in Section D7. The good news is, that area has an air pocket. They have oxygen. They're alive. Relief swept through the crowd, followed immediately by more questions. Shiera's translator unit crackled, as multiple voices spoke at once. Sun Hee raised her hands for silence. The bad news is that the tunnel is extremely unstable. Any attempt to dig through right now could trigger a larger collapse. We could kill everyone down there, including the rescue team. Then what do we do? A human father shouted. We just leave them? No, son, he said firmly. We've called for specialized equipment, heavy-duty supports and precision drilling gear. It's coming from the orbital station. It will be here in 48 hours. 48 hours? Shi'ira's translator converted her distress into human language. My offspring is small. He needs food. They have emergency supplies, son, he interrupted, but her voice was gentle. Water, nutrition bars, medical supplies. The air pocket can sustain them for at least 70 hours. I know this is hard, but we have to be smart. We have to be patient. Dong Hyun arrived, his administrative badge giving him access through the crowd. He began organizing the parents, setting up a waiting area with shelter and food. He assigned people to monitor communications. He did everything he could to help, but he couldn't change the fundamental problem. They had to wait. Shi'ira couldn't accept it. Patience was supposed to be a Valeth virtue. Her people were known for careful planning and logical thinking. But she wasn't thinking like a Valeth right now. She was thinking like a mother. And mothers didn't wait patiently while their children were in danger. She approached Sun He directly. There must be another way. Some other path. There must be another way. 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 Sun He's expression was pained. I'm sorry. I've reviewed every option. The main tunnel is blocked by tons of rock. The support structure is compromised. If we try to force through, we'll kill everyone. Other parents joined Shi'ira's protest. Both human and Valeth voices rose in anger and fear. Old tensions began to surface. A human man accused Valeth engineers of poor tunnel design. A Valeth elder blamed human mining techniques for destabilizing the rock. The fragile piece started to crack under pressure. Dong Hyun stepped between the groups. This helps no one, he said loudly. Our children are down there together. Human and Valeth, trapped in the same space. If they can share that small pocket of air without fighting, then we can stand together up here. The argument died down, but the fear remained. Parents settled into the waiting area, watching the tunnel entrance as if they could will their children to emerge. No one noticed the quiet human mechanic slip away from the edge of the crowd. Tae-young moved quickly through the colony's maintenance corridors. His mind was already working through possibilities. He had helped build these tunnels 2 years ago. He knew the layout, including sections that weren't on the official maps anymore. There was an old maintenance shaft. It had been built during initial construction to provide emergency access. After the main tunnels were completed, it was supposed to be sealed, but Tae-young knew the sealing work had been delayed, pushed back for budget reasons, then forgotten during a change in administration. That shaft ran close to Section D7. Maybe close enough. He reached the emergency equipment locker and used his maintenance authorization to open it. Inside were breather masks, plasma cutters, emergency medical supplies, and rescue beacons. He took what he needed and sealed the locker. His hands shook slightly as he prepared the equipment. His mind supplied all the reasons this was a bad idea. The shaft was unstable. It hadn't been inspected in years. It might have collapsed already. Even if he got through, he might not be able to get anyone out. He might die down there for nothing. But his mind also supplied another thought. A small Valeth child, who had looked at him with curiosity instead of fear. Parents who were living through the worst moment of their lives. 7 people trapped in the dark, running out of time. During the war, Tae-young had made a lot of decisions he regretted. He had followed orders that resulted in death and destruction. When the war ended, he promised himself he would be different. He would build instead of destroy. He would save instead of kill. This was his chance to keep that promise. He left a note in the equipment locker. Just a simple schematic showing the maintenance shaft route. If he didn't come back, at least someone would know what he tried to do. The entrance to the old shaft was behind a storage area. Tae-young moved the crates aside and found the sealed hatch. The seal was just a basic lock, easy to bypass with his tools. The hatch opened with a groan of metal. Darkness waited below. Tae-young activated his headlamp and climbed down the ladder. The shaft was exactly as bad as he expected. Rust covered the walls. Water dripped from cracks in the ceiling. The metal supports looked fragile, like they might give way at any touch. He descended carefully, testing each step. The shaft angled downward, following the slope of the bedrock. His breather mask filtered the stale air. The temperature increased as he went deeper. Above, Sun-hee was reviewing the geological data when she noticed something strange. One of the equipment lockers showed recent access. She checked the logs and her eyes widened. "Where's Tae-young?" she asked the nearest worker. The worker looked around. "I don't know. He was here earlier." Sun-hee ran to the equipment locker and found the note. Her face went pale as she read the simple schematic. She found Dong-hyun in the waiting area. "We have a problem," she said quietly, showing him the note. Dong-hyun read it and cursed softly. "The condemned shaft? He's going through the condemned shaft? We need to organize a rescue team," Sun-hee said. "By the time we mobilize a team, it will be too late. That shaft could collapse at any moment. Either it works, or—" Dong-hyun didn't finish the sentence. Shiera had been listening with her acute hearing. Her translator caught enough words to understand. A human was attempting a rescue. Through a dangerous path, alone, she approached them quickly. "Which human?" she demanded. "Which one is going?" Dong-hyun hesitated, then said, "His name is Tae-young. He's a mechanic. He helped build these tunnels." The name meant nothing to Shiera, but then Sun-hee pulled up a photo on her datapad. Shiera's respiratory spiracles fluttered rapidly. It was him. The human from the market, the one who had looked hurt when she pulled away. "Why would he do this?" Shiera asked. The question was genuine. It made no sense. Humans were supposed to be practical, logical when it came to survival. This was suicide. Even she could see that. "Because there are children down there," Sun-hee said simply. "And he's the kind of person who can't just stand by and wait." Shiera's mind struggled to process this information. It contradicted everything she knew about humans. They were warriors. Killers. They fought for their own species. Not for others. Especially not for Valith. During the war, the two species had tried to exterminate each other. Why would a human risk his life for a Valith child? Deep in the shaft, Tae-young had his own problems. A section of the ladder had rusted through. He had to jump down 3 meters, landing hard enough to jar his knees. The sound of his landing echoed through the shaft. Somewhere above, metal groaned ominously. He froze, waiting to see if the whole structure would come down. After a long moment, the groaning stopped. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding, and continued downward. The shaft seemed to go on forever. His arms ached from climbing. Sweat dripped into his eyes despite the cool air. The headlamp beam showed nothing but more darkness below. Then his foot hit solid ground. He had reached the bottom. According to his mental map, Section D7 should be approximately 30 meters east. He just had to cut through some rock. He activated the plasma cutter and began to work. The plasma cutter burned bright blue in the darkness. Tae-young worked methodically, cutting through layers of rock and compressed mineral. The heat made his small workspace unbearable. He had to stop every few minutes to let the tool cool down and to catch his breath. His breather mask warning light blinked yellow. The filter was getting clogged with dust and heat. He had maybe an hour of good air left. Maybe less. He tried not to think about it, and kept cutting. In the trapped air pocket of Section D7, 7 beings huddled together in the dark. 6 Valith workers sat in a cluster. Their chitinous bodies pressed close for comfort. Young Calyx was curled between 2 of them, trying to be brave but clearly scared. The adult Valith had shared their emergency rations with him. They had checked him for injuries. They had tried to keep his spirits up by telling stories. But everyone knew the situation was bad. The air was getting stale. The walls creaked and shifted. Small rocks fell from the ceiling regularly. An elder Valeth named Teksha listened carefully to the sounds around them. His species had excellent hearing, able to detect vibrations through rock. He had been a tunnel worker for 30 years and knew what different sounds meant. "Something is moving," he said suddenly. "Something is cutting through the stone." The other Valeth went silent, listening. Calix's antennae perked up. "Is it rescue?" he asked, hopefully. "Maybe," Teksha said. But his tone was cautious. The cutting sound was coming from the wrong direction. The rescue teams should be working from the main tunnel entrance. This sound came from below, from the old abandoned sections. "Should we call out?" one of the younger workers asked. "Not yet," Teksha decided. "Let's see what it is first." They waited in tense silence. The cutting sound grew louder, closer. Then it stopped. They heard a different sound. Metal, striking stone. Someone was digging through manually now. Teksha made a decision. He chirped loudly, a sound that would carry through rock. If there was a rescuer out there, they needed to know they were getting close. On the other side of the wall, Tae-young heard the chirp. His heart jumped. He was close. He was actually close. He struck the rock harder, adrenaline pushing away his exhaustion. The plasma cutter had run out of charge, so he was using a manual breaker tool from his equipment pack. It was slow, brutal work. Each strike sent painful vibrations up his arms, but he kept going, widening the hole he had started. A piece of rock fell away, and suddenly he was looking through into a dark space. He shined his headlamp through the hole. Clustered eyes reflected the light back at him. Valeth, multiple Valeth, all staring at him in shock, and in the center of the group, one small Valeth with young features, Calix. For a moment, nobody moved. The Valeth workers stared at the human with fear and confusion. What was a human doing here? Why had he come alone? What did he want? Calix recognized him. "The market human," he chirped excitedly. "You came." Tae-young managed a tired smile. "Yeah, kid. I came. Everyone okay in there?" The Valeth workers' translator units converted his words. They looked at each other, mandibles clicking nervously. Teksha, as the eldest, spoke for the group. "We are unharmed but trapped." "You came through the condemned shaft?" "It seemed like a good idea at the time," Tae-young said. He was already assessing the situation. The hole he had made was small, maybe half a meter wide, big enough for the Valeth to squeeze through, but not big enough for him, and the rock around it didn't look stable enough to widen safely. He could make the hole bigger, but it would take time. Time he wasn't sure he had. His breather mask warning light was now blinking red. The filter was nearly done. "Listen," Tae-young said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I can get you all out, but we need to move fast. The shaft I came through is unstable. We need to go one at a time." Teksha understood immediately. He also understood something else. The human's breathing device was failing. The human knew he might not have enough air to get everyone out and still escape himself. "You should go first," Teksha said. "You know the path. You can guide us." Tae-young shook his head. "No, the smallest first. Calix, you're up." The young Valeth looked uncertain, but one of the workers gently pushed him forward. Tae-young helped him through the hole. Calix's small body fit easily through the gap. "Okay, buddy," Tae-young said. "Stay close to me. We're going on an adventure." One by one, the Valeth workers squeezed through the hole. Each time, the opening crumbled a little more. Rocks fell. The walls groaned. Tae-young's military training screamed at him that he was violating every survival rule. You secure your own exit first. You don't trap yourself helping others. You stay alive so you can help more people later. But those were war rules. War was about survival. This was about something different. The fifth Valeth worker made it through. Then the sixth. Only Teksha remained. The elder Valeth looked at Tae-young through the hole. "Human," he said. "Your breathing device is dying. The shaft may collapse. You should leave now with the others. I can wait for the official rescue team." "Not happening," Tae-young said. Come on. Through you go. Teksha hesitated, then began to squeeze through the hole. He was larger than the others, and the fit was tight. Halfway through, his shoulder plates caught on the rock. He pushed harder. The rock around the hole cracked ominously. Taeyong grabbed Teksha's reaching arms and pulled. The elder Valeth came through in a shower of small stones. The hole collapsed behind him, sealing off the air pocket they had just left. Everyone stared at the pile of rubble. If Taeyong had tried to go first, they all would have died. If he had tried to follow them through, he would have been trapped on the other side. His only chance was the route back through the condemned shaft, a route that was already collapsing. Move, Taeyong ordered. Everyone, follow me. Stay close. Don't touch the walls unless you have to. They began the journey back. Taeyong led the group with his failing headlamp. The Valeth followed in a line, their natural ability to see in low light, helping them navigate. The shaft was in worse condition than before. Taeyong's trip down had destabilized it further. Metal supports hung at dangerous angles. New cracks spread across the ceiling. Water poured from breaks in the stone. His breather mask gave up completely. The filter light went dark. Taeyong tore it off and breathed the tunnel air directly. It was thick with dust and low on oxygen. Each breath felt like he was drowning. They reached the ladder section. The gap where he had jumped down now looked impossibly high. He would need to climb, and he wasn't sure he had the strength. The young one first, he gasped. His voice sounded strange without the mask's filter. I'll lift him up. Calix climbed onto Taeyong's shoulders. The human stood slowly, legs shaking, and lifted the young Valeth toward the ladder. Calix grabbed the lowest rung and pulled himself up. The other Valeth followed. Their multiple limbs made them natural climbers. They ascended quickly, scrambling up the ladder with insect-like efficiency. Taeyong watched them go, leaning against the wall. His vision was getting dark at the edges. Not enough oxygen. He had pushed too hard, breathed too much dust, exhausted himself completely. Above him, Teksha reached the top of the ladder and looked back. He saw the human standing alone in the darkness, swaying on his feet. Human, Teksha called down. Climb. Taeyong reached for the ladder. His hands didn't want to grip properly. He pulled himself up one rung, then another. His arms felt like they weighed 1,000 kilograms each. He made it 5 rungs up before his strength gave out. His hands slipped. He fell backward, hitting the ground hard. Pain exploded through his back and legs. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard the Valeth above calling to him. He tried to get up, but his body wouldn't respond. Something was wrong with his legs. The fall had done more damage than he thought. Metal groaned overhead. The shaft was finally giving up. Taeyong closed his eyes, oddly at peace. He had gotten them out. The kids were safe. That was enough. Then he heard a different sound. Something was coming back down the shaft. Fast. His eyes opened to see Teksha descending the ladder at dangerous speed. The elder Valeth dropped the last 2 meters and landed beside the fallen human. What are you doing? Taeyong gasped. Get out. Save yourself. 3 years ago, Teksha said, his translator converting the words carefully. My clutch brother saved a human soldier during the war. He died for it. The elders said he was foolish. But I always wondered what drove him to do it. Now I think I understand. Teksha grabbed Taeyong's arm and began pulling him toward the ladder. Above ground, She-Ira paced back and forth in the waiting area. Other parents watched the tunnel entrance with desperate hope. Time moved like frozen honey. Every minute felt like an hour. Sunhee was coordinating with the rescue teams when her communicator crackled. We're picking up movement in the auxiliary shaft. The old one, east section. Sunhee's eyes widened. She grabbed her equipment and ran toward the location, Donghyun right behind her. She-Ira heard the commotion through her translator and followed, her multiple legs carrying her faster than the running humans. They reached the auxiliary shaft entrance just as something emerged from the darkness. A small Valeth child, covered in dust, climbed out into the light. Calix! She-Ira screamed. She rushed forward and grabbed her offspring, touching him all over to confirm he was real and whole. Her mandibles clicked rapidly, too overwhelmed for words. More Valeth emerged from the shaft. The workers, dirty and exhausted, but alive. Parents rushed forward to meet them. There were tears and embraces, relief washing over the crowd like a wave. Donghyun helped pull the last worker out. "Where's Tae-young?" he asked urgently. The worker, Taeksha, didn't answer. He simply turned and dropped back into the shaft. Sun-hee shouted after him, but he was already gone. Deep below, Taeksha reached the bottom to find Tae-young exactly where he had left him. The human was conscious, but barely. His face had gone pale. His breathing was shallow and rapid. "Stubborn human," Taeksha muttered. "Why do your species never know when to give up?" He examined Tae-young's legs. Both were trapped under a fallen support beam. The beam wasn't extremely heavy by itself, but in his weakened state, the human couldn't lift it. Taeksha's chitinous arms were stronger than they looked. Evolution had designed the Valeth for digging and construction. He gripped the beam and lifted, his body structure distributing the weight efficiently. "Pull yourself free," he commanded. Tae-young tried. His legs screamed with pain, but they moved. He dragged himself out from under the beam. Blood soaked through his pants from cuts and scrapes. The shaft groaned again. Louder this time. Dust rained from the ceiling. They were out of time. "Can you climb?" Taeksha asked. "No," Tae-young admitted. His legs couldn't support his weight, let alone climb a ladder. Taeksha made a decision. "Hold on to my back. Don't let go." "You can't carry me up a ladder," Tae-young protested. "I'm too heavy. We'll both fall." "Your species taught mine something during the war," Taeksha said. "You showed us that impossible just means no one has tried hard enough yet. Now hold on." Tae-young wrapped his arms around Taeksha's thorax. The Valeth's chitinous plates were hard and uncomfortable, but they provided good grip. Taeksha approached the ladder and began to climb. The elder Valeth moved slowly but steadily. His multiple limbs gripped the rungs with precise strength. Years of tunnel work had made him an expert climber, but carrying a full-grown human male added enormous strain. Halfway up, Taeksha had to stop. His respiratory spiracles fluttered rapidly. His limbs shook with effort. "Leave me," Tae-young whispered. "You can still make it alone." "Humans talk too much," Taeksha replied and continued climbing. Above, at the shaft entrance, a crowd had gathered. Sun-hee had organized a rescue team, but they were waiting to see what emerged. The shaft was too unstable to send people down without knowing the situation. Young Kalik stood at the front of the crowd, held tightly by his mother. "The market human saved us," he told everyone who would listen. "He came through the bad tunnels. He was scared, but he came anyway." Shiera's mind was still trying to process everything. Her offspring had been rescued by the being she feared most. The human she had recoiled from in the market had risked his life to save Valeth children. The contradictions hurt her brain. Humans were supposed to be killers, warriors without mercy. But this human had shown more courage and compassion than made sense. A figure appeared at the shaft entrance. Taeksha, covered in dust and struggling under a heavy burden. Tae-young hung from his back, barely conscious. The rescue team rushed forward. They pulled both of them out of the shaft. Medical personnel immediately surrounded Tae-young, checking his vital signs and injuries. "Get him to medical now," Sun-hee ordered. "Move." They loaded Tae-young onto a stretcher. As they carried him away, he turned his head slightly and saw the crowd. So many faces. Human and Valeth, all watching him. He saw Calix, safe in his mother's arms. He managed a weak smile before his eyes closed. The medical team rushed him to the colony's medical center. The doctors worked quickly, treating his injuries: broken ribs, damaged legs, severe oxygen deprivation, multiple cuts and bruises, but he would live. In the waiting room outside, people gathered. Human workers who knew Tae-young as a quiet, reliable co-worker. Valeth workers who had been rescued. Parents whose children had come home alive. Shiera stood among them, still holding Calyx. She didn't know what to do with the emotions surging through her: gratitude, confusion, shame for her earlier fear, wonder at the human's sacrifice. Dong Hyun addressed the crowd. What happened today shows us something important. Tae-young didn't ask if the trapped people were human or Valeth. He just knew they needed help, and he acted. That's what peace really looks like. Not just an agreement on paper, but people caring for each other when it matters. Over the next few days, as Tae-young recovered, something changed in the colony. Valeth workers began leaving gifts outside his medical room: crystals from the deep mines, woven fibers in traditional patterns, things of value in their culture. Humans who had never spoken to Valeth before started conversations. Calyx visited every day, bringing drawings. The young Valeth drew pictures of the rescue, of the brave human who came through the dark tunnels. He showed them to anyone who would look. Shiera came on the 5th day, when Tae-young was finally strong enough to sit up. She entered his room hesitantly, her translator unit ready. Tae-young looked up and recognized her immediately. "Your son is quite the artist," he said, gesturing to the drawings covering his walls. "He's got talent." Shiera's mandibles clicked nervously. She had practiced what to say, but now that she was here, the words seemed inadequate. "You saved my offspring," she began. "You risked everything for a child that was not your species." "He's just a kid," Tae-young said simply. "Kids deserve to be saved. All kids, regardless of what they look like." "I feared you," Shiera admitted. "In the market, I pulled Calyx away from you. I thought you were dangerous. I thought all humans were only capable of violence." Tae-young was quiet for a moment. "During the war, I did violent things. I'm not proud of it, but I won't pretend I didn't. Your fear wasn't completely wrong. Humans can be dangerous, but we can be other things too. We can choose who we want to be." Shiera touched her chest with one chitinous hand, a Valeth gesture of deep respect. "My people have formal words for this moment. For when a life debt is acknowledged, but those words feel too small. How do I thank someone for giving me back my child?" "You don't have to thank me," Tae-young said. "Just, maybe next time we meet in the market, you could wave instead of running away." Despite herself, Shiera's mandibles moved in the Valeth equivalent of a smile. "I think I can do that." She turned to leave, then stopped. "The elder Teksha told me something. He said his clutch brother once saved a human soldier during the war." "Was that you?" Tae-young's expression changed. "I never knew his name. There was an explosion. I was trapped. A Valeth soldier pulled me out and then went back for others. The building collapsed on top of him. I lived. Because of what he did. That was my clutch brother," Shiera said quietly. "Shiren. The elders said he died foolishly, wasting his life on an enemy. I always believed he died as a hero. Now I know I was right. I've thought about him every day since it happened," Tae-young admitted. "I never understood why he saved me. We were enemies. Perhaps he saw what I am learning to see," Shiera said. "That beneath the differences, we are not so different. We both love our children. We both value courage. We both can choose compassion over fear." She left the room, taking Calyx with her. But something fundamental had shifted. The barrier of fear that had stood between them had cracked. 3 weeks after the tunnel collapse, Tae-young was finally released from medical care. He walked with a slight limp that doctors said would fade with time. His ribs still hurt when he breathed deeply. But he was alive. And that was more than he expected. He returned to his small quarters near the mining tunnels. Everything was exactly as he had left it. The workbench, the tools, the simple furniture. But something felt different. He felt different. The next morning, he went to the market to buy supplies. He expected things to be the same as before. Quiet, isolated, existing on the edges of colony life. Instead, he found something unexpected. Valeth workers nodded to him as he passed. A human shopkeeper refused to take payment for his supplies. Children, both human and Valeth, pointed at him, and whispered to their parents. At the fruit stand, a young Valith approached him hesitantly. "Are you the tunnel human?" she asked through her translator. Tae-young smiled. "I guess I am. You saved my aunt," the young Valith said. "Thank you." She scurried away before he could respond. Tae-young stood there, not quite sure what to do with the feeling in his chest. It was warm and uncomfortable, and good all at once. Later that day, Dong-hyun found him in his workshop. The administrator wore an expression that meant official business. "The Colony Council wants to give you a commendation," Dong-hyun said, "for bravery and service to the community." "I'd rather they didn't," Tae-young replied, focusing on the equipment he was repairing. "I just did what needed doing." "That's exactly why they want to honor you," Dong-hyun said. "But there's something else. She-Era and the Valith community have proposed a joint project. They want to build a memorial, something to honor those lost in the war and those working toward peace." Tae-young looked up from his work. "A memorial?" "They want it to be a collaboration between humans and Valith, different species working together to create something meaningful, and they've asked specifically if you would be willing to help with the construction." "Me? I'm just a mechanic." "You're more than that," Dong-hyun said. "You're proof that change is possible, that we can move beyond fear and hatred. Your involvement would mean something to both communities." Tae-young was quiet for a long moment. "I'll think about it." That evening, She-Era came to his workshop. Calix was with her, carrying a datapad with design sketches. "We have ideas for the memorial," She-Era explained. "But we want human input. We want it to represent both species equally." Calix showed Tae-young the sketches. They depicted a structure combining human architectural styles with Valith organic design elements, a place for reflection and remembrance. "It's beautiful," Tae-young said honestly. "But I'm not sure I'm the right person for this. I was a soldier. I hurt your people during the war, and I feared your people unjustly," She-Era replied. "We have all done things we regret. But we cannot move forward if we remain trapped in the past. This memorial is about choosing a different future." Tae-young studied the designs. An idea formed in his mind. What if we included names? Everyone who died in the war, from both sides, human and Valith together. She-Era's antennae tilted thoughtfully. The Valith elders might resist. They prefer to keep human and Valith memorials separate. "Then maybe it's time to show them a different way," Tae-young said. "Our dead don't need to be enemies anymore." Over the following weeks, work on the memorial began. It started small. Just Tae-young, She-Era, and a few volunteers from both species. They worked in the colony's central plaza, a space shared by everyone. The design evolved through collaboration. Human engineers contributed structural knowledge. Valith artists added beautiful, flowing elements that seemed to grow organically from the base. The two styles, initially so different, began to blend into something unique and harmonious. People stopped to watch as the memorial took shape. Some were supportive. Others were skeptical. A few were openly hostile. An old human veteran confronted Tae-young one day. "You're honoring the enemy, the ones who killed our people." "They killed our people," Tae-young agreed. "And we killed theirs. But the war is over. If we keep treating each other as enemies, we're just waiting for the next war to start." The veteran walked away angry, but he came back the next day to watch. And the day after that, on the third day, he approached again. "I lost my son in the war," he said quietly. He was 20 years old, barely trained before they shipped him out. "I'm sorry," Tae-young said. The veteran looked at the memorial. "Will his name be on there?" "Every name will be on there, human and Valith. Everyone who died deserves to be remembered." The veteran nodded slowly. "Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time." He picked up a tool. "What can I do to help? What can I do to help?" Similar scenes played out across the colony. People who had lost loved ones came to see the memorial. Some left angry, some left thoughtful, but many stayed to help. She-Era worked alongside Tae-young daily. They developed a comfortable rhythm, learning to communicate across the barriers of different body structures and thought processes. She taught him about Valeth artistic traditions. He explained human construction techniques. One day, as they worked, Calix brought them water. The young Valeth had adopted Tae-young as a sort of honorary uncle, visiting constantly and asking endless questions. "Will the memorial show the scary parts of the war?" Calix asked. "Or the peaceful parts?" 2. Tae-young and Shiera exchanged glances. It was Shiera who answered. "It will show that both existed. The war was terrible, and we should never forget that. But peace is possible, and we should never give up on that." "Does that make sense?" Calix nodded seriously. "I think so. The memorial is about remembering but also about hoping." "Smart kid," Tae-young said. "He learned it from watching you," Shiera replied. "You taught him that courage means doing the right thing, even when you're afraid." As the memorial neared completion, the Colony Council organized a dedication ceremony. Representatives from both the human government and Valeth hive councils were invited. It would be the largest gathering of both species since the peace treaty was signed. The night before the ceremony, Tae-young couldn't sleep. He stood looking at the memorial in the moonlight. It was beautiful. A structure that seemed to grow from the ground, incorporating elements of both species into something entirely new. Teksha approached, his multiple legs moving silently across the plaza. "Can't sleep either?" the elder Valeth asked. "Too much thinking," Tae-young admitted. They stood together in comfortable silence, looking at what they had helped create. "My clutch brother would have liked this," Teksha said eventually. "Ziren always believed that different species could work together. That's why he saved you. He saw potential, not just an enemy." "I wish I could have thanked him," Tae-young said. "You have," Teksha replied. "Every day you choose peace over fear, you honor his memory. That's worth more than words." The dedication ceremony drew a large crowd. Humans and Valeth filled the plaza, though most still clustered with their own species. Old habits were hard to break. Donghyun gave a speech about cooperation and hope. Representatives from both governments spoke carefully scripted words about peace and mutual benefit. Then Shiera and Tae-young stepped forward together. They hadn't prepared speeches. They had agreed to simply speak from the heart. Shiera went first. "3 years ago, I lost my clutch brother to this war. For 3 years, I carried fear and anger toward humans. I taught my offspring to fear them too. Then one human showed me that fear is a choice, and courage is choosing differently. This memorial stands for everyone who made that choice. Human and Valeth together." Tae-young spoke next. "I came to this colony to escape the war, to forget what I had done and what had been done to me. But I learned you can't build a future by running from the past. You face it, you acknowledge it, and then you choose what comes next. This memorial is that choice. We choose to remember, and we choose to move forward, together." They unveiled the memorial together, pulling away the covering cloth. The crowd saw it fully for the first time. A beautiful structure, with 2 walls meeting at an angle. One wall held human names, carved in standard lettering. The other held Valeth names, written in their flowing script. At the point where the walls met, the names blended together. Human and Valeth mixed in a pattern that showed no separation. At the base was an inscription in both languages: "Different species, shared future. May those who fell in war guide us toward peace." The crowd was silent. Then, slowly, people began to move forward. They searched for names of loved ones. Human fingers touched Valeth names. Valeth antennae brushed human script. Tears fell from eyes and mandibles alike. An elderly Valeth female approached Tae-young. "You put my son's name here, beside human names." "I did," Tae-young said. "Is that okay?" She touched the name with gentle reverence. "More than okay. Thank you for showing me that his death was not meaningless, that something better can come from the pain." She moved away, and others took her place. All day, people came to find names and leave offerings. Flowers, crystals, photographs, mementos. The memorial became a bridge, connecting not just human and Valeth but past and future. As evening fell, Tae-young found She-Ira sitting near the memorial with Kalex. "You changed everything," She-Ira said. "Not just for me, but for the whole colony." "I just did what needed doing," Tae-young replied. "That's what courage is," She-Ira said. "Doing what needs doing, even when it's hard. Even when you're afraid." "You were afraid in those tunnels, weren't you?" "We were afraid." "Terrified," Tae-young admitted. "But there were kids down there." "Fear doesn't matter when kids need help." Kalex looked up at both of them. "When I grow up, I want to be brave like you. Both of you." She-Ira pulled her offspring close. "Then remember this moment. Remember that bravery isn't about not being afraid. It's about choosing love over fear, hope over hatred, and understanding over ignorance." The three of them sat together as the stars came out. Around them, the colony continued its evening routines. But something fundamental had shifted. Humans and Valeth walked past each other with nods instead of fear. Conversations happened across species barriers. Children played together in mixed groups. The peace was still fragile. There would be setbacks and challenges ahead. Old prejudices wouldn't disappear overnight. But the foundation had been laid, built on the simple truth that courage and compassion could exist in any species. Tae-young looked at the memorial, at the names blending together, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, solid hope for a future where the war was truly over. Not just on paper but in people's hearts. "Thank you," She-Ira said quietly. "For what?" Tae-young asked. "For rescuing my child. For showing me that fear is a choice. For helping build something beautiful from something broken. We built it together," Tae-young replied. "That's the point. Neither of us could have done it alone." As the colony lights came on in the darkness, the memorial stood illuminated, a beacon of what was possible when different beings chose understanding over fear. The alien mother and the human who had once frightened her sat together in peaceful silence, watching the stars and dreaming of a better tomorrow.